Hello, and welcome to Powerful Places Podcasts. I'm your host, Gary White, and today we hear a conversation that Ellen had with Ferran Blasco about crossing a threshold at the bridge at Besalú, Catalonia.
You want to say something to introduce?
We are here at Besalú, at the entrance to this beautiful bridge over the river. It's been raining, birds are twittering, and we're looking forward to what else you have to tell us.
Well, let's see. We've been having some sessions where we've talked, in a room about these things. So finally today we had a chance to go out, and we decided to start here in Besalú because there's this beautiful bridge, and it's going to give us a chance to just say a few words about this idea of threshold that separates the profane from the divine, like the day-to-day from that which is divine, which it's also in the day-to-day, but okay. So when we approach, or when we want to approach that we consider sacred, for us it's very important in the tradition to first of all observe what we call or generate what we call a receptive state of mind, yeah? Because it's not so much that we are going and discover something, but uncover something that it's already there, expressing itself all the time. So the difference between an active participation, thinking we're going to generate something, and this other more receptive state is like we actually become, as the word indicates, receptive. We're opening ourselves to be more conscious of that which is. Yeah, that's the basis of our approach to sacred sites. So then, what we always like to do, we like to do a little centering practice. Okay. This is a little bit in the how you call that, in those podcasts we did. Mm-hmm. Okay.
The 3-part podcast that we posted.
The centering practice doesn't have any mystery. It can be done any place. We can do it here, if you want to get nicer background. So basically, the centering practice means that before we approach something to connect with that receptive mind, we center ourselves. Yeah? Centering, it's as simple as bringing attention to the present moment, and that developing that attention in the present moment is what's going to lead us every time to more and more refined states. Okay? Which the sacred site, whichever sacred site we visit, is going to help strengthen that. Basically, at the beginning, we always start just feeling the physical body in the present moment. Doesn't have any mystery. We just take a nice breath and feel the air coming in and out. And we feel the physical sensation. And we start bringing the senses to the objects of perception. What does this mean? The nose, the sense of smell, of scent, we connect it consciously with the breath and with what's around, so that brings us to the present moment. So we just breathe. We recognize that today is very nice that we have this light rain, so the air is fresh. Yeah? So we start perceiving that freshness, no? And then the ears. Yeah, the ears, we connect them to their object of perception, which is the sounds. All this is part of the liturgy too. When one is in a sacred site and there's some sort of worship act, there's sound, there's the bells, there's the smell from the incense and all these things, So if we approach the receptive mind consciously, we already are ahead of the game, if there was a game to play. Okay, so we hear the birds, we hear the very subtle, the drops, okay? And what we perceive is like every time our consciousness is able to perceive things that are further and further. Okay, the sense of touch, this recognition of the physical body. Okay, and then once we feel present, we just very gently smile down into the earth. From the heart, we feel this connection with the earth that smiles back through us into the luminosity of the heavenly realm. We sense that union of heaven and earth, and from that sensation of creative energy, we smile from the back into the realm of the ancestors, both family and spiritual. And we smile into this area in general. Okay. And then we come back to the center, activating, very important always, the motivation that our visit here, our time here is going to be of benefit for us and all sentient beings that are around. We could dedicate to these more minutes. We just stay centered in this sensation, and then we go back to the idea of the bridge. No, we're here, this beautiful bridge. Okay? Then the idea of threshold is very important. We constantly through the day are going through thresholds. No? The idea is correct. The word threshold, umbral. No. This is very important because that this is that which divides one state from the next state. Okay? It's in those thresholds that we say that it's easier to access that consciousness we call the absolute. Okay? These are big words, but we use them because they are already used, so it's easier to point some realities. Okay?
On pilgrimage, we will talk about entering into a liminal state, and limin is threshold.
Okay.
So you're crossing over the threshold into this space where you are different in some way.
Yeah, exactly. So
your status, your roles change on pilgrimage.
So here the idea is like one step before. It's like what's happening in the threshold, because it's very important in these spaces of threshold. It's where you actually can connect. One of my teachers, a Korean Taoist teacher, it's strange, like he would talk about God. Usually Taoists don't talk about God in this way, but say is in those spaces where you will find God,
The threshold.
The threshold, yeah. So the threshold is very important. You reach to a space, and that space is actually, it's gonna offer you the vehicle to carry through the state from like the daily state to the ordinary state to the extraordinary state. Okay, that's only gonna happen if you have a certain degree of awareness. Okay, so in the Tibetan or in the Hindu tradition, for example, that state, they call it the Tara. The goddesses, the Tara. The Tara is that which carries you from the state of suffering to the state of happiness and enlightenment. Okay, in the Christian tradition, the Pope, I don't know how would you say it in English, El Sumo Pontifice. It's like the biggest bridge.
That's right.
Okay.
Word Pope comes from pontis, comes from bridge.
Okay, so that's the idea. So this threshold is like where you establish the bridge to achieve a state where the mind is more refined. Yeah. So then, this bridge now will walk a little bit, and we'll see because the weather is getting better. Yeah? Basically, the bridge we have as human beings, the bridge that we constantly have, is the breath. Okay. So we always, at the beginning, we go back to centering ourselves through the process of using the breath. As you start building this mandala of going back to the breath, going back to the present moment, going back to the senses, perceiving their specific objects with clarity, you start creating this structure, this mandala, where the subtle worlds start opening. Yeah? Okay? So let's take a couple of breaths here. And this idea that the centering mind is also a mind that doesn't search. This is very important because when you're going to go to a sacred site, the tendency is it's going to be to go search for the object. Okay. Here the idea is the opposite. You remain in that state that is, let's call it, of calmness, and from there you perceive the object. Yeah, does that make sense? Okay. So we can walk a little bit down. Then how do we walk? Okay. We walk with that state of clear mind, and a basic way to start walking with a state of clear mind as we're approaching the threshold is having certain sensation, first of all, of the feet. Okay. So the feet, their sensation, this floor here is very nice because it has these cobblestones, exactly. Okay. And then this is very interesting, like the approach is a little bit like making love. Okay. You don't go to a site and you're in the site and then just you do. Like, this is a process that sometimes...
Foreplay.
Yeah, foreplay is the word. And the foreplay sometimes lasts months, you know. Sometimes before we go to a site or you go on pilgrimage, maybe there's several years even, you know. So everything you've done up to that moment, it's that foreplay. You're building up to that. So it's very important. So in this case, you know, we've been talking about this for several days. And today, before we actually arrive here, we saw the process of foreplay and how confusing can it get. You know, you go, we picked up the car, here, there. So you have to be very, the mind has to be very awake to be able to bridge through connecting with the threshold that which seems limitations. Yeah, we rented the car. It was difficult to find a parking spot, then we couldn't open the door, okay?
Yeah.
Each of these little steps is a little threshold where the mind has to start developing clarity. Okay? A very good question would be, which of those little events was not a sacred temple? Yeah? Bless you. Which of those little events, which is all those little moments, which of those places we were was not a sacred temple? You know? So if you cannot recognize that each of those moments was a sacred temple in itself, once you reach what you call the sacred temple itself, the experience is still going to come from a very limited point of view. Does that make sense? Okay, so we can walk. Then also as you approach any site, very important to observe the surroundings and what the surroundings offer you. Okay, we started here because there's this bridge, and it's the bridge. It's a symbol of that which gaps one state, which is the limited state, to the unlimited state or the extraordinary state. Yeah? And in this case, we have these beautiful surroundings here, very green, very fresh, and we have this particularity that there's actually the water is very clean here, okay? And it has this reflection. Okay? We say that consciousness expresses itself like a mirror, you know, is that which reflects what is on it without being altered by it. You know? Like in the Upanishads, in these beautiful Indian texts, there's a quote that says, "There's this light that shines on the world, but it's never distorted, but that which it shines over it." Does that make sense? Okay. So as we approach this, as we are crossing this threshold, we have this image here of water, still reflective of what's above. So by perceiving that water with clear mind, also our mind generates more space and more clarity. You see there under the bridge, how beautiful? Mm-hmm. How the light, the water is reflecting the image that is a projection of the light, and that which is a physical aspect of the light, it's reflecting the water. It's very beautiful. Yeah. So that's basically the process of crossing the threshold. How to unite those two aspects. It's very important to rely on the senses, especially on the sense of hearing, because the sense of hearing, we're very used to the sense of seeing, and we are used to seeing things that are far away. But the sense of hearing usually is rather limited to things that are close. But in a space like this, as you're trying to bridge this space from limited to unlimited, which unlimited we would call a space that is more like wider, bigger, you start noticing that you might start hearing things very clearly that actually are rather far, that you would have never noticed. That points out to the mind being more spacious, being more comprehensive, more, I wouldn't say open, more receptive. And that's also part of what we call the activating process. And also part of what you start noticing is that even the sounds that usually might be not so pleasant to the ear start unfolding that quality of sacredness.
So there's no difference. The truck on the
Truck on the road,
on the bridge, the babbling river below us, the birds, it's all...
Well, what you start perceiving is all the sounds are, what they say in the Vedas, no, all the sounds are the sacred sound, all the sounds are the voice of the goddess, expressing the glory of the Lord. So,
So you don't pick and choose the sounds?
You pick and choose the sounds, you just rely on the sensation of the sound to reveal the energy and to reveal the space where it's sounding. And all those little steps are gradually what happens as you're crossing the threshold from a state of very limited consciousness to a state that is more open.
So when I'm hearing for the first time, and it's very exciting, is that the threshold isn't just something you step over into another state, like it's a thin line, you just go, but that the threshold expands and is a vehicle, is a process through which you move into another state.
Yeah, exactly.
And it can expand immensely.
Yeah. And the threshold becomes a state. There's no difference between the threshold and the state. Mm-hmm. See those beautiful ripples there in the water? Mm-hmm. They're down there, down the bridge.
Yes.
So you can see how the threshold spreads until it leaves you in the state.
So even very crudely put, one could say, a lot of times you think, oh, I'm going to move into stillness so I can have an experience. But actually, it's the moving into stillness that is the experience.
Yeah, it's a moving. Yeah. And then, you might realize that actually you've been always still. That having never but stillness, at the same time there was a dynamism. And that is through the revelation of dynamism that you can perceive the stillness also. To perceive night, we have to know day. So these things are always like, this is what we say, that the experience of consciousness is it's dynamic, because it expands and contracts into states that seem opposite but are complementary. It's like this bridge, you could say that the bridge and the river are opposite, or the bridge and the space where the bridge is are opposite, but somehow are united. You cannot separate. Like separating a consciousness from space or light from space. It's from the union and the recognition of union of those that this sensation of bliss is recognized. You can get very blissful just by looking at some beautiful, like, a little creek there, no? And you can see how so many people are walking by, and they're doing their thing, and so it takes a lot of guts to stop. Okay, we can go.